May 5th, 2025 at 6 p.m. And we are going to start with the flag salute, and I'll lead us off here. So if everybody could stand and remove your caps. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We acknowledge the original inhabitants of this area, the Snohomish people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society. Do I have a motion on the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, just want to, I'm sorry, motion passes. Also just want to let everybody know that Director Davis will not be attending. She is going to be excused tonight. She's serving in her capacity for another event tonight. All right, superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. The bulk of my superintendent's report this evening will actually be presentations by members of staff, so thank you for that. But before heading into that, I wanted to just extend two appreciations. So tomorrow is Teacher Appreciation Day, and Wednesday is School Nurse Appreciation Day. So you will see some of those items across social media, and we are, of course, so grateful for our teaching staff and our nurses for all the work they do in our schools with our students.
All right, thank you very much.
That is me tonight, yes.
All right, we're going to jump into communications and reports. And the first report is going to be school consolidation, and that's going to be presented by Dr. Deborah Rumbaugh.
Yes, thank you. I am actually standing in for Miriam this evening. She had another meeting to attend. So let's dive in. Want to begin this evening with facilities and operational updates. You will notice on here that facilities and IT did another consolidation related walkthrough at MMS last week. There were some desires from our IT team to really get a sense of what the needs would be from a technology standpoint as they were preparing for Liberty staff and students to arrive there next fall. And they were pleased with what they saw, grateful for another opportunity to be able to see the site. And they were able to get all the information that they needed for readiness in work starting in late June. So it was a positive for the team and grateful for those that hosted the walkthrough. It went pretty late into the evening, so thankful for that. Staffing and HR. So the first item that you can see on the agenda, and the board received individual updates on this last week, that MMS staff, certificated staff, were notified of their placements last week. That process did not go as smoothly as we had hoped in terms of some of our communications that day had errors. And Lori Taylor and I take full responsibility for those errors, and we're able to get letters back out to staffs with the appropriate FTE configuration on those. But we wanted to just note, not only were we disappointed that we missed the mark there, but we're still engaging with the school and MEA for any other adjustments that might need to take place. And it is the placements that were made at MMS relative to closures do not negate the typical sort of what I call the spring shuffle that happens over the course of spring as new jobs become available or transfers come into play. But those modified letters were delivered last week. In terms of communication, there are just some items for information for you. You can see Marysville Middle School has a Wildcat Night, and that's just an opportunity to say farewell. You can see that's on the 28th at 5:30. And the next evening is Liberty Elementary. Their event is titled Memory Lane Walk, and it is from 6 to 7 on the 29th. So we invite any board members that would like to attend those to do so. Later this week, in terms of communication, we will be communicating to each family of a student in grade 6 or 7 at Marysville Middle School and notifying them of their future school, whether that's Cedar Crest or Totem. We've gone through those letters and hand-checked each one of them to be sure that what is on the written page matches with what is in Skyward. And so that has been verified. The only sort of contingency that we have in there is sometimes families' addresses aren't always updated in Skyward. So it's possible we might have 1 or 2 letters that need to be adjusted after that once addresses are updated. But in terms of our data, we're confident that the data is accurate. So that's kind of that last bullet point. Elementary schools. So we relaunched our 6th grade 0-hour band survey. You might remember we talked about that a couple of meetings ago. We relaunched that interest survey on the 28th. It does close on May 9th, and we are doing that in partnership with our district music teachers. We have already had 60 additional families give input and participate in completing the survey, so that's positive. We want to continue to keep that survey open, and this doesn't negate the opportunity for 6th grade students and families to participate in the fall. There is clear language on the survey that this isn't your only opportunity, and you're also not committed if you say yes on the survey and something changes for families in the fall. So we're being as flexible as we can be. The next item you'll see on both the elementary and the middle school slide, and that is spring staffing meetings. So we had talked previously about a desire for staff that know where they're going to be in the fall to have an opportunity to go to that school, meet with their new staff, meet with their new principal, and that will be taking place on May 30th. And as you can see here, it's described as a dedicated time for teachers who are moving to a different school. And of course, this was made possible in collaboration with MEA because those days and dates are pre-planned in the fall. And so that flexibility is appreciated to give folks a chance to go to their new sites. Similarly, same information here on middle school. So there, as you know, the end of the day is different for elementary than it is for middle school. So there's about a 1-hour overlap between those 2 early release times on Friday that will allow for staff time to be together. Collaboration, there's nothing new added to this slide. We just wanted to highlight that we are continuing our biweekly meetings with MEA, that we have our music subcommittees that are continuing their work along with curriculum, librarians as needed, and then school visits. And anytime that a building leadership team or a staff requests someone from the consolidation work to go to a building and meet with staff, we are always willing to do that, and we have been. All right, so that is your update for today. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
I've got a few, just some clarification basically
Yes.
as we're going through. You said you did the tech walkthrough. Is there any idea at this point how much, if anything, will need to be done at MMS?
I wasn't at the walkthrough. Is there anyone on my team? Very little. We talked about this morning at our daily meeting, and my sense, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there was a sense of optimism at how ready the building was. And so it's going to be more a matter of readiness for individual staff in that classroom versus, wow, we need to really retrofit the building on the tech side to be ready in general, if that helps.
That does help. Second one, there's no, when we're going to reassigning staff, there's no playbook for this kind of thing that we really, it's kind of an unusual situation. And so, I appreciate acknowledging that mistakes were made. What do we learn from this? And is there anything in place now to prevent something like this happening in the future? Because these unforced errors are things that really kill us and kill morale with the staff. So
Yeah, agreed, agreed. The biggest takeaway is to hand check those letters. And that's the process that we'll be taking moving forward. And you'll notice I mentioned that we hand checked letters going out to students' families related to what middle school they'd be at next year. And that's just a process that we're going to have to continue to use while we build the capacity in our own staff on completing those technical tasks, so that we can do a mail merge at the central office and we can stand behind that.
Yeah, I just have two more. You said 6/7 notification going out. I might just maybe curious, how long is the window open for application for 10th Street? Because some people might not make that decision until they know that, oh, I'm going to Cedar Crest or Totem. So is
Yeah.
there what's the date on that? Do you
Yeah,
have
does
that?
anyone can help me with the answer to that? When does the transfer window close for families?
For families, if I wanted, but let's say I was kind of on the fence and then I wasn't sure where my child was gonna go, if it was gonna be Cedar Crest or Totem. And then I found out, it's like, oh, I'd rather, try to get into 10th Street. Is there still room and opportunity for those families to avail themselves of 10th Street? Or is it too late for that? Okay. Awesome, thanks. The last question I have deals with the May 30th PGF. It's great that, staff is getting a chance to go to other buildings. Has there been any thought, are there any middle school teachers who are going to be going to high school, for example? And how are they going to be accommodated?
Yes, thank you for that. So the plan as of today is that we have asked our high school principals to reach out to middle school staff that are coming their way. This particular day is challenging for the high school staff, and we didn't feel like we were able to reconcile the elementary, the middle, and the high school. So the ask is for the principals to reach out directly to those middle school staff and offer a meeting and/or an invite to an event that the high schools might be having between now and June 30th.
I just have a question or comment. One thing I'm really concerned about is eventually, I know there's still a lot of planning to be done, but how exactly we're going to be handling the transition of 6th grade to the elementary school. And I'm pleased we're doing so much with the 0-hour band survey, but there's a whole lot of other things that need to happen as well. So I would appreciate if we, and I know you've provided us some information on that, but I would appreciate continued updates on that as this goes forward.
Yeah, absolutely. The piece that we were waiting for was the placements of MMS staff so that we could invite any staff members that were moving to 6th grade with the opportunity to be a part of that planning team. We had the very same conversation this morning in our daily meeting, so we're on the same page and we'll get you that.
Okay.
I think the other two directors asked a number of the questions that I had. I appreciate that you're hand checking some of the student assignments and wondering kind of how we're ramping up to be able to serve families and answer questions this week. If staff kind of feel armed with both information and, things like, is there room at 10th Street, or is a transfer window open, or what can we do?
Yes, yes. We are providing talking points for our building administrators to share with teachers on what those talking points look like. As you know, it's best if we all are kind of reiterating the same information. And so those will be made available on Thursday for our staff.
Okay, thank you. And then just want to echo Director Thomas's kind of question around preparation for 6th grade. We'll be very interested to hear kind of how curriculum planning goes, especially with respect to just ensuring rigor at the elementary level for our 6th graders. So we'll look forward to hearing from that. I think the strategy makes a lot of sense to wait until we have staff input from the folks who are going to be doing the work, but.
And we have had initial meetings. You may recall we mentioned that pretty early on, and had a fair amount of, a handful of staff reach out and say, I'd really like to be a part of this, but I don't know my assignment yet. So we had 1 or 2 meetings and then decided to press the pause button so that we didn't get too far along and then perhaps have to back up with staff that are actually impacted by those decisions.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think one last piece is just thinking about how we are welcoming our MMS students into their new buildings and making sure that they feel both welcome and at home and have an opportunity to engage there. And I imagine a lot of that's happening at the building level, but would be curious to hear what's happening there.
Yep, some examples. We'll get that for you.
Representative Josiah, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
More of just like a follow-up question to make sure I'm like on the same wavelength. What exactly are we trying to get MMS prepared for?
MMS staff?
Yeah.
Okay, so because we're closing Marysville Middle School, all of the teachers that work there all the staff that work there need an assignment at another building for next school year. And so that's the process that we're going through right now that we just described. Didn't go as well as we had anticipated, and we're still kind of working through that.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions from the board? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to asset preservation report. This is going to be presented by Greg Dennis, Director of Safety and Security.
Good evening, school board, Dr. Rumbaugh, folks to my right and folks behind me. I'm here tonight a lot of times, but for the first time here to present to you the asset preservation program. That's a requirement of OSPI. So for the 30-year life cycle of a building that is funded using state match, we're required to annually report on the condition of that building to show that we're adequately maintaining it. Looks like Jane has put the cover sheet up on the document there for everybody to review, but it's a 62-page document behind that would tell you the actual condition of a facility. So if a roof was at end of life and it had previously been marked fair, and then we replaced the roof, it would then change to a good status or an excellent status. And the flip side of that is, as the buildings age, some of the conditions obviously get degraded over the years as well. So again, you have that 62-page document in front of you. If there's any questions on that, I can answer for you. I'd be happy to. Otherwise, this is just meeting the annual requirement for the 30-year life expectancy of those buildings.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
I do. And I think I might have heard the answer as part of your presentation. So all of our buildings aren't here, probably because not all of our buildings got a state match. Is that why?
Correct. So these are the facilities that were built using the 1990 grant and then, or the bond, and then the 2006 bond.
Okay. And then my next question is, I know at one point we had a capital facilities report. Do we have something similar for the rest of the buildings that we have that aren't necessarily represented here?
Yeah, we have our 6-year capital facilities plan. I can't remember when you last saw that.
Like, when's that 6-year period up?
Right.
I feel like this may be 4
I'd
years
have to
old.
look back at it and see when that is, but I could work with Dr. Rumbaugh, and if that's something that we want to run in front of you guys at a work study or something, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Just curious on, it says, building condition assessment percentage, and then there's numbers there from like 92 down to, 78 or whatever. Obviously, I'm assuming that 92 is better than a 78, but is there a number that when we get to its critical, it's like, oh, you're at 70 now, you need to really take, red light starts going off, or is it just kind of a number that's based on several factors?
So that number comes from the averages of all the scoring for all the different categories.
Yeah.
So just because a number hits a certain threshold doesn't mean, oh, we got to run out and replace the building. it might just be, we need to replace the roof, and then that's gonna bring that percentage back up. Because that's just, as Dr. Rumball likes to say, averaging averages.
That makes sense. I'll look at the other 62 pages.
Just out of curiosity, do we have to take, are we required to take any specific action based on the results of this? In other words, if something had, for example, I'm not seeing it, but if something had shown a maintenance priority of high, would we be required to take immediate action?
Nope, no, this report is just to be presented to you once annually.
Okay,
And then I'll have some other presentations later in the show that will talk about some of the major projects we have coming up.
Mhm.
And that would not necessarily on these buildings, but like we just recently did roof replacement on Kellogg Marsh, Allen Creek, buildings that are on this list.
Mhm.
And so those then came up higher, but there isn't like a red flag or something that alarms go off and we have to immediately go out and do those repairs.
So I know that this is an annual report. The far right column says next certified BCA due, not until 2028. So how often is that a 3-year cycle or?
I think that's a 6-year cycle. And then the years in between, you do a self-evaluation. And those 6 years, you have to have somebody come in and do the evaluation for you.
And it typically aligns with what your capital plan is. So we have a 6-year capital maintenance plan, and that aligns with this.
You got anything over there? Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much.
I'm just gonna stay here.
You're gonna be there all meeting. I think, next up, Distress Schools Grant Update Report.
All right, so we put this little document together for you guys. Last year, we came to you when legislature approved our $3.6 million of distress schools funding. Dr. Gonzalez and I presented a list of potential projects. We went through and prioritized what those projects would be, submitted this list to OSPI. Some of which we've already finalized, completed the project, such as the ECAP ELC roof, Pinewood roof, has 2 different types of materials. That's why it's got 2 different line items. Allen Creek fire alarm upgrade happened over winter break. MP siding replacement, if you remember on that one. We hated throwing money at one of our newer buildings, but the siding had been installed improperly and was failing. And so we had to go back and replace that to protect our investment. And then we have some intercoms and some other upgrades scheduled for this summer, which I'll be presenting to you a little bit later on in the show. Some of those projects also. We've identified the vendors for the work that was completed or a purchase order has been issued. We also identified the approval date by yourselves for the ones that are over the threshold and require your approval. We show at the bottom line just under the $3.6 million right now. And we also still show 4 of the projects that have estimations. And so until those get formally bid or proposed, we will carry that just under 3.6 million until we have actuals, and then if there's any money left over, we'll do some other small projects to meet that $3.6 million target. And then on that bottom line where it says heating controls, multiple sites, and it has a big chunk line item of $400,000, that's going to be a bunch of smaller $50,000 to $75,000 projects that fill that $400,000 in. So instead of listing 10 different projects, we just put it all under heating controls, which is how OSPI wanted us to report it, because it's like for like across the district. They were less concerned about which buildings those were going to happen at. So that's why you see a right column or a right shifted a line item under that heating controls that shows a $15,000 number for summer of this year for our first heating controls project that'll be completed. Any questions I can answer?
Just clarification, is this 3.6 million, is that part of our capital funds, or is it in addition to our 7+ million we have in capital funds?
So Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's in addition to, because that's spend it and then get it back. So it shows on our capacity report, that our expenditure report, that we're going to spend it, but it's also generating that same amount of revenue in return. Is that correct, Dan, that it's within that or outside of that 7 million? Yeah, because it's not cash on hand or in the bank.
I have a question, or actually a clarification. I notice you have several items listed as actual cost, but they haven't been done yet. I assume that that's a contracted price at this point, and you won't really know if that happens until the work is actually completed.
Correct. Those purchase orders have been cut. Those are set numbers though, because they're using purchasing cooperatives.
Okay,
So they're either KCDA or one of the other national or state purchasing cooperatives.
okay,
And so those numbers are fixed. Obviously, unless there was some major something behind the walls that we didn't see.
yeah.
But otherwise, we don't anticipate any additional costs.
Okay,
for those.
is it relatively uncommon then that you wind up having cost overruns on these sorts of orders?
Yeah, for this type of project, that is correct. Now, like some of the roof projects and stuff, we went back, the gutters had all failed, so we had to add gutters back in.
Right,
So that would be a change order, but like what you're seeing for the intercom and stuff, it's already those vendors' system. They're just upgrading the head end and the
okay,
devices at the other end. And so their wiring's all in place. If their wiring's failed, they have to replace their wiring at their cost, that type of thing, unless we punched a hole in the wall and damaged it. So otherwise, it's all their equipment already.
okay.
Just a point of clarification, since I looked at Dan, it jogged my memory. With these projects that are identified as summer, if you remember, I think at the last board meeting, Dan presented the budget update and the cash flow situation. And these are the projects that he referenced that would be coming in later in summer. So they will not impact our June cash flow issue. Dan, does that sound about right? Sounds good to him. But these projects won't start waiting on equipment and such. These projects won't start till after that June has come and gone.
And there was intentionality around that analysis ahead of time. So thank you for mentioning that.
All right, thank you very much.
See you soon.
You can actually take a seat now and we'll come back to you. All right, now we're going to jump into hearing of business of visitors. Got 2 people who have signed up tonight, and just for some housekeeping, there should be soon a timer above my left shoulder on that TV there. And everybody gets 3 minutes to speak unless you want to donate your time to someone else who's on this list. And once that timer gets to about 30 seconds, this is a new timer. So actually, I don't know if it turns yellow or not. But, oh no, this is, okay, we're good. It'll turn yellow, and that means you have 30 seconds. And then when your time's up, it'll flash red. And if that happens, if you've got about 15 to 20 seconds that you can wrap up, please do so. But then I'm going to call up the next person right after you. So first person on my list is Kevin Hoover. Sorry, Karin Hoover. Okay, so can you put 6 minutes for Linda? Hello, Linda.
All right, my name is Linda McLaurin. All right, sorry about that. I'm a teacher at Marysville Middle School, so I do appreciate the opportunity to come and speak tonight with you guys. I would like you to know I do come before you not out of opposition, but out of responsibility for our staff, our students, and to the values and the transparency, accuracy, integrity, and the fairness that must guide the operations of our school district. I would like to address your question as to what kind of preparation we need for the teachers. We have teachers who have been in the building for 30 years who are losing their positions. We have teachers moving into primary education who have only been secondary teachers. They're teaching grade levels they've never taught before. So it is imperative that we get as much preparation as possible and have the district support us, because it has been minimal as of now, and we need the care and attention I think is warranted. So recently, we touched on this, that the involuntary transfers for our school were issued. By nature, these are definitely disruptive and difficult for both educators affected and the school communities that we serve. But what's most troubling, and I know you touched on this, but I would like to go further into it, is the way these were handled. In multiple instances, the letters were sent off to our staff with incorrect information, including misspelled names, misspelled school names, wrong employment status. Each and every one of us opened that letter and it said we were going to appoint 5. Imagine being told you have a full-time job and you were being moved to part-time. These letters are people's livelihood. This is their lives. And it was incomprehensible. We were advised that the way this would be done is that the district would look at endorsements, credentials, seniority, and the choices that were picked through the surveys that were sent out. This wasn't done. This was not done at all. And these errors, they're beyond a simple oversight. They send a message of carelessness, incompetence, disrespect to our professionals who've dedicated themselves to our students. I'd like to correct some information. We haven't received the corrected letters yet. So I know that's one thing that was said. However, we have not. I do know that Ms. Taylor let us know that she had them on Friday and was at our school. Nobody received it. So whether there needs to be talks with the MEA, which is understandable, that should have been done at the beginning. So there's a couple things that were already addressed as well. I do appreciate you guys are going to get the letters out to our students. 6 weeks left of school. I think it's a bit late, but it's needed. I'd like to ask you guys to offer an apology to those students that were here that you were closing the school. They came to tell you and present the great thing on at Marysville Middle School. Right after they were told those great things weren't going to be happening anymore, they were being shut down. They were devastated. Tears and tears. The conversations the next day at school were heartbreaking. I'd also like to bring to light that there is an email that had been going on with one of our board members engaging in private communications with a select school within the district, offering to continue to expand a program with 10th Street, which would require additional funding from the district. The email states that Burgess was in support with moving forward with this as well, with the expansion, despite the district's widely acknowledged budget constraints. I went door to door with my children, and we knocked and asked our voters to vote for our levy, to pass our levy. One issue taxpayers brought up time and time again was middle school sports. They, as well as I, were under the impression additional funding would help bring back middle school sports. Pouring money into a middle school program for a school that only services 200 people, roughly, and neglecting the other 1,400 middle school students, incomprehensible. We're not fulfilling a commitment to our voters. This goes against what they wanted and sends a message to our middle school students who are not being considered, that they don't matter. This is accurate. This actually raises a lot of serious concerns. Private communications circumvent the board governance, violates principles of equitable decision-making, and creates a perception, if not the reality, of preferential treatment at the time when all schools are being asked to make sacrifices, and some the biggest sacrifices. I'd like to be very clear. Our district cannot afford to play favorites. Every school, every program, and every student must be treated with fairness, equity, and transparency. Offering the promise of funding, especially in private, and especially with the funds that do not exist, is not only misleading, it undermines the integrity of the board and the trust of the public. This is a time that calls for unity, professionalism, and absolute transparency in every aspect of governance. Transparency is not optional, nor is it just a public relations strategy. It is a foundational responsibility of the public institutions, especially those with the interest of educating our youth and managing tens of millions of dollars of our taxpayers. I'd like to urge you all, as district leadership, to review the matters carefully, correct the errors in communication immediately, and to reaffirm a commitment to ethical, equitable practices across the district, to lead with integrity. Our staff, our families, and most importantly, our students and taxpayers deserve nothing less. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, now we're going to move into approval of minutes. Do I have a motion for the minutes?
I move to approve the special session minutes of March 31st, 2025, and the special session minutes of April 28th, 2025 as presented.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, motion passed. I'm sorry, all those in favor?
Aye.
Cart before the horse, is that what they call it? Motion passes. All right, consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion?
No real discussion, but I know that this is usually the point of our program where we talk about gifts to the district. There weren't any listed here, but I wanted to just acknowledge Marysville Rotary. I know all third graders in the district got dictionaries this week, and so that's kind of a cool thing that they do for our community. They do a lot for our community as far as Rotary auction and scholarships and stuff, but that's kind of always been a big thing in Marysville for the kids to get their dictionaries. So that's kind of a cool thing. So I'd like to acknowledge them for their gift.
Awesome, thank you very much for that. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. And we're going to get into some informational items. First up on the list is wrap purchase of 2 transit vans. This is going to be presented by Dr. Annie Carnell.
Global realities, workforce expectations, and appropriate technologies. And also strategic plan goal 3.1. Each student graduates from high school ready for their preferred future. To that end, Regional Apprenticeship Pathways would like to purchase these vans so that all students participating in the program are ready for their preferred future. Regular participation in field trips, construction competitions, career building events, visits to apprenticeship schools, and construction job sites in varying stages of development is essential. District busing time constraints are prohibitive for the hours of the RAP program, and regular use of charter buses is not cost effective. So purchasing two passenger transit vans will enable RAP pre-apprentices to access learning experience beyond school walls, exposing them to workforce expectations and educating them for the world that they will live in. What question?
I was just going to ask if you could talk a little bit about the budgetary impact on the next page.
Regional Apprenticeship Pathways is fully funded by the state legislature and will have no fiscal impact on the Marysville School District. District will hold the title to the vehicle, just like it does for our current RAP truck, our pickup truck that we have. All maintenance, fuel costs, and everything that's currently the responsibility of the RAP budget for the pickup truck translate the same. It'll be the same for the van. So no impact. Thank you.
Because you just answered my question.
Well, we have to wrap this van with Marysville logos and stuff like that.
The logo is placed on the side typically when a vehicle goes under the district, within the district's fleet. Yeah,
And is that also covered by the wrap budget or?
yeah, all expenses are covered by the RAP budget.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I've just got one comment, one question. Comment was I was lucky enough last week to go to the RAP Spring Showcase and talk to the students in the program. Really proud of the things they were doing, the tiny homes we were building and sheds and benches and showing me their pours and how to, tie rebar and all this stuff. I got to even play with the excavator simulator and stuff. But talking to the kids there, or the students there, I call them kids, they really lit up when they were talking about their chance to go to like a job site. They were telling me about when they got to go to the PUD and drive their Bobcats and drive their stuff there, and nothing like being in the field and actually working at it. So I think that any time we can get them out to the job sites to see real world things going on, it's a positive thing. My question is, are the instructors going to need do they have endorsements, or are they going to need to get special endorsements? And do we have a avenue for them to do that if so needed?
Yes, and yes. Both instructors and also our office manager currently have that endorsement through the transportation department. And so they update that annually. And yes, they currently drive. We've been borrowing CTE's vans for our trips. So this will give us the flexibility to have our own scheduling for that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
And thank you so much for attending. It was really great to have the support, and also Director Davis was in attendance, and it really means a lot to the community, the students in the program. And I know Dr. Rumbaugh, when you first came on board, you took time to meet with me to understand the RAP program and ask questions and offer support. And so thank you so much for that. I've really appreciated that relationship we're building.
Actually, that was going to be my question, which is how is this being handled now? Right now, you're borrowing the equipment from the CTE program, the vans that they have. So
yeah, so RAP is a CTE program.
Okay.
So it falls under the umbrella as a district program.
So, I mean, are these replacing those vans, or is this these are supplemental?
These will belong to RAP,
Okay.
our program technically, and we will be able to schedule and use them as needed. Currently, if we're scheduling to use the vans at a certain time and JROTC has a competition that is the same day or later in that afternoon, we end up having to get those charter buses, which is really cost prohibitive.
Okay, so basically by buying these, you're avoiding scheduling conflicts with other CTE programs.
Yes, and then giving RAP the flexibility and, as far as the day goes, because our program runs outside of Marysville Pilchuck High School day, for example, before and after. So.
And is this just part of the normal RAP funding, or was there a special allocation to buy these vans?
This is part of our funding.
Okay.
Sounds like in the long run, we might save money, or RAP might save money, not having to spend it on charter buses.
Correct.
You got anything? All right. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much. All right. Next up, we have Cascade ES RTU replacement. presented by Greg Dennis, Director of Safety, Security, and Facilities.
Good evening again. So the next reports I'm going to give you are, I guess, a first reading of what our intentions are with some of the distressed schools grant that I just previously presented to you. I think that the process is I bring them forward to you tonight as a preview, and then we take action on this at the next board meeting on the 19th, whatever day that is, 19th or so. So the first one I have for you is the Cascade Elementary rooftop unit replacement. It has reached its end of life by several years. There's 4 separate buildings at Cascade. One has been replaced through, if you remember, a fire on Thanksgiving a few years ago. And then this one is the main building that houses the office and the majority of the classrooms. That'll be replaced. We were able to Band-Aid it at the beginning of the year to get us through. And when we went through the school closure process and the decisions were made, then we had to invest money into this unit to be able to properly heat that space for those students. So this would be, again, through a purchasing cooperative, KCDA, for a total of $217,533.15. And the vendor for this project would be Hermanson. Question I can answer on this.
That is just for one unit, not the 3 remaining units?
So of the 4, one has already been replaced.
Yeah.
This will be unit number 2 that's replaced. And then the other 2 are still functioning properly at this time.
Any estimate as to, I mean, are we holding them together with duct tape, or are they going to get a few years out? I mean, what's the status of those 2 remaining?
I would say somebody will probably be standing here in front of you in the next 5 years, probably talking about expanding the need there to the other rooftop units. They're nearing end of life.
But it's not immediate.
That's correct. It is not immediate.
How old are the other 2 units? And I ask only because I have heard that in some of our buildings, we are manufacturing parts, looking everywhere we can, because some of the things that we're trying to repair are old enough that you can't easily find replacement parts.
That's correct. But the other 2 buildings are smaller than this building, so they don't have as much, let's say, wear and tear on them. The smallest building is 4 classrooms and 2 bathrooms. So that one probably lasts the longest. The other one is the library building, which serves less classrooms, has that larger space, but again, doesn't have as much activity as the one that houses the office and the majority of the classrooms. So yes, they're obsolete. Most of the failures, we're doing a really good job in the district of keeping our old parts off of some of our other units. And so we are able to utilize those a lot of the time to keep equipment running that would otherwise not be the case. And so right now, both of them are functioning, I'll say, properly.
Just one more. I'm assuming since it's a newer unit, it's going to be much more efficient and
That's
maybe
correct.
cost us less money to operate.
That's correct. It's still a rooftop unit as opposed to a boiler like I'll talk about in my next presentation. So they're still not as efficient. They're more like your furnace at home, but they're certainly more efficient. Probably, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I would say we're going from a 60% efficiency to a 85, 90% efficiency. So mathematically, we should save a little bit on our utility bills moving forward. But they'll just raise the cost of our utility bills.
You have anything down there? Any other questions from the board? Interesting bit of trivia. I used to work for Hermanson 4 years ago. So every time I see Hermanson, it like brings me flashbacks.
In a good way, I hope.
Yeah, they're a good company. All right, you're staying up here for this one.
Yep.
Sunnyside Elementary School boiler replacement.
Yes, so same situation, presenting to you a first reading tonight, board action on the next meeting on the 19th. KCDA contract with, again, Hermanson to replace the boiler at Sunnyside Elementary. The boiler has reached end of life. If you recall, when we had the deep freeze for Martin Luther weekend, I think that was last winter. Sunnyside was one of the buildings that had some of the damage. The reason for that was the boiler had tripped out. So every day our custodian has to go in and reset that boiler. And this boiler is so old that it was originally a coal-fired boiler that has since been converted to natural gas. It's about the size of a full-size van and is about 50% efficient and will be replaced with a boiler about the size of a refrigerator and will be 90% efficient. The cost of this project is $436,578.20 and is included on the distress school grant funding report that I presented to you earlier.
Just to reiterate, this, how the grant works is we have to expend this money out of our capital projects first, and then we submit for reimbursement. And typically reimbursement comes within 48, 72 hours.
Correct. So the minute we push go on the check to make payment, we also push go on the submittal to OSPI. It's usually within 48 hours that we're reimbursed that cost. So as far as cash flow issues, it's a very small window. Again, these projects will be completed after our June concern. So we won't have that same cash flow impact.
Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you very much for that one. On to the next. Purchase. You go ahead. You just go ahead.
Like I'm just standing here. I'm just so anxious, Connor. So we have the need for additional cameras, security cameras at Marysville, Pilchuck, and Cedar Crest. Because of the design of those campuses, when we initially went through and did our ad of security cameras all across the district, we left some pretty big gaps in some of these spaces. And so we want to go in and backfill those gaps. As you can imagine, Pilchuck would take a million cameras to cover every square inch of it. But we're looking to add, I think it's about 10 cameras each at Marysville, Pilchuck, and Cedar Crest to take care of. Some of it is like we change our loading zone, and so we want to have cameras at our loading zone. So we, like in Cedar Crest, for instance, they moved the buses around back. We didn't have a camera there, so now we'll add cameras to that area. So that's an example of areas that we would be doing ads for. This is not under the distress schools, but this is coming out of our regular capital projects account. That $7 million that's been referenced. The addition of these cameras for labor and for installation and purchase of the cameras is $135,260.52.
So all of these cameras are additional cameras, not replacing like known bad cameras.
That's correct. These are all additional cameras.
So we're increasing our coverage at both of these schools by 10 cameras.
Yep. And at Cedar Crest, that's double what they have. At Pilchuck, that's about 15% of what they have. Because they have like 70 views out there already. These are all multi-head cameras. So one camera equals 2 to 4 views, depending on its location. So you can do 90, 180, 270, or 360-degree views. If it's on a corner, we'll add a 270-degree view to get angles every direction.
So this cost is for the cameras and the installation of the cameras. When we add that much more data feed to wherever the hub is for those cameras, is our system set up appropriately to handle that much more data?
Yeah, great question. So we have one server here at the district office that houses the majority of our cameras. Marysville Pilchuck has its own server with, I'll say, way more than enough capacity. It also houses Totem Middle School's cameras. And then Cedar Crest is shared with the server at Marysville Getchell. So we have 3 servers district-wide, one here for the majority of the cameras. Pilchuck and Getchell each have their own and also support a middle school. we'll be able to, with those servers, be easily able to meet the 30-day requirement for keeping video footage.
That was going to be my question, is how long that's stored for?
We're required to store it for 30 days. Our cameras usually carry about 45 days capacity on them. And some of them, depending on usage, will even have 2 to 3 months on them at times.
And is this purchase motivated in response to any specific incidents, or is this just caution?
Just caution that no specific incidents or claims that have jolted us to go out and do this. It's just, we know there's a need there. I hate to say kids figure out where the cameras are at and figure out where they can go do things they maybe aren't supposed to. So we want to make sure we're covering those spaces. And then, like I said, some of it's bus loading zone or parent pickup areas, some of those high traffic areas, or maybe walking paths to and from cafeterias where we've got them covered in the cafeteria, but we have a gap or a blind spot getting them to and from there. So we're adding camera locations such as that.
So I'm just curious what the expected lifespan is for a camera.
Good question. We implemented these about 2016. I think we put up our first front door cameras with that capital levy that was ran. We have not had to replace one of those cameras yet, so we're approaching 10 years on those. Knock on something. And the majority of the cameras that we've put out in the buildings was, I think, COVID timeframe, 2020, 2021, somewhere's in there. And I have yet to had to replace a camera. They have 5-year warranties on them. So there has been a couple replaced their warranty, but those were one-offs. Those were not the majority of the cameras. These are also purchased on a purchasing cooperative as well.
So, and then I'm assuming we have signage up or some kind of,
Yep.
People should assume they're on camera most of the time these days, but.
Right, but we do have signage also at all of our entrances and then the sides of the buildings that have coverage. We have signage identifying that as well. So we have quite a few signs around on our building.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? All right, thank you very much. Do you just want to go ahead? Go ahead.
I got this, Connor. So my next presentation is in regards to an interlocal agreement with Northwest ESD 189 for threat assessment services. This is an annual agreement that I bring before you. This started when legislature mandated all school districts in the state of Washington go through the same threat assessment process as everybody else, and they created safety centers at each of the ESDs to help facilitate that. So in this case, the ESD, well, in all cases, but in this case, our ESD is, there's a cost per pupil, and that's how that $15,375 number was generated. So it's based on FTE, and it's based on last year's FTE for this year's contract. So as you can imagine, with our enrollment declining, this cost has gone down a little bit each year as well. Some of the services they provide in this are threat assessment level 1 training for our building administrators and counselors and such. So when we have some turnover of building administration, they can go on to the PD enroller through the Northwest ESD, and they can receive that training at no additional cost. And then also when a level 2 threat assessment is needed, which is when the level 1 team can't come up with a safety plan that everybody is comfortable with and bringing a student back to school, you'll call on the ESD to provide a level 2 threat assessment, in which case they bring in community partners and other supports that maybe will help establish a plan that'll allow that student to receive some educational services.
Questions, comments from the board? You might not know this, but do you know about what percentage of our administrators has gone through the level 1 threat assessment training?
So I would have said that last year we were near 100%. And this year we're a little bit below that number. I don't have the exact number, but I know there's a few. So in the absence of the training for those buildings that don't have a, say, a trained administrator, I go out and facilitate those threat assessments for those schools so that somebody has had that training that can walk through the process.
After you've received that training, is there a period of time where you have to receive a refresher training?
There isn't. We've had a couple. We've hosted a training here in person originally. We had a online refresher during COVID. Then the ESD made available all of these online trainings. So once you're trained once in it, you're not required to train on it again. Some of the schools, specifically like elementaries that don't do these as much as the secondary schools, sometimes they'll request some additional training or use that for some of their credits they need for their enforcement credentials, etc.
How often typically would you say methods change, threat assessment methods?
So this one this is the Salem Kaiser model built out of Oregon 20 years ago. ESD 112 out of Vancouver was using this for 8 or 10 years before it was adopted by legislature for all school districts to use it. There's been very minimal changes to this document since its origination, and it still seems to be fairly successful in accomplishing what its goal is, which is to create a safety plan and hopefully get that student back to school and receiving their instruction.
Ideally, we don't have to perform any of these at our school. But the reality is there's probably some schools that have to perform these more often than others. And so that would lead me to believe that some of those administrators who have to perform these more often might be able to, regurgitate this information easier than somebody who maybe doesn't have to do this but once a year. So I don't know if I'm sure we're tracking instances, but to keep administrators engaged, and obviously safety in Marysville, I think is a big deal, and I think everybody can agree on that. But for the administrators who may not have to deal with this that often, even if the material hasn't changed in the last 20 years, would it be a good idea, to require kind of a recertification?
Yeah, that's certainly something the district could look into. I think you would run into the same boat a year later because if they haven't done a threat assessment again, they're going to forget what they learned. So I think that's where, like, my position that is the point of contact between the ESD and the districts on the, I think there's a title for it, but I'm that person identified in the contract. And so that's where I'll go out and either facilitate for them, depending on maybe what that threat is, or I'll say handhold for the sake of a better term, and walk them through the process, but let them lead it and just support them along the way so there aren't any missteps. But I think just sending them to the training just to turn around and forget it again may or may not be in everybody's best interest.
I just always think it obviously it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. I think I remember last year you bringing this to us, and obviously grateful for the ESD to work in conjunction with us, and appreciate you letting us know kind of what they offer and what we're paying for. So appreciate it. Any other questions, comments from the board?
I would just add, thank you, Greg. It is a heavily protocoled process, so it's not something where you need training to understand sort of the questions to ask and the items to check on. It is almost a step-by-step process, so that is helpful for school districts.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to the next. Go ahead, take it away.
Surprise. So the last, I believe, document I have for you tonight is interlocal agreement with the city of Marysville for the renewal of our school resource officers contract. Again, this is something I bring before you annually. As you'll recall, we historically paid when times were good, 0.75 FTE of each of two SROs. That averaged around the $280,000 range. Last year and this year again, the city of Marysville has agreed to what I like to call the buy one, get one free model, where we pay 10 FTE and they provide the other 10 FTE. Last year's cost of this contract was $155,000 because there was a change in one of the SROs. Services were not decreased, just the person changed, and that decreased the contract to $138,340 for this upcoming year. We know that City of Marysville Police have always been a huge proponent of having school resource officers in the district, as well as the district has always been very supportive of having school resource officers as well. I want to give a shout out to the City of Marysville once again for stepping up financially and supporting us as we navigate this financial situation that we're in. And hopefully someday in the future, we'll be able to repay them, support, hold up our end of the bargain of what was originally created. In the meantime, continue to have 2 school resource officers in our schools.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board?
Just a quick question, and certainly want to echo your appreciation for the city working with us and working within our budget constraints, obviously. And then I'm just curious where our SROs are spending a majority of their time.
So a little history. Prior to 2014, our schools, our 2 big high schools had SROs assigned to them. They would cover a middle school and they would divide up the elementary schools and cover them also. After 2014, City of Marysville received a COPS grant for 4 years to fund 3 additional school resource officers. They actually fully funded all 5 of them. 3 were in addition to the 2 that we were paying for, so we got a little break during that time as well. Those 5 officers were assigned to the 2 big high schools and the 3 middle schools. City. And then when the COPS grant expired in around 2019, and we went back to the 2 school resource officer model, it was determined that we would be best served by them being, say, mobile and working out of their vehicles, and covering calls as needed to help alleviate some of the calls on their patrol staff. A lot of that was based on their own staffing at the city. So now that the City of Marysville Police Department is better staffed than they were previously for this next school year, excuse me, we've looked at whether or not we'd be better served to have the SROs assigned to each high school, 1 at each high school, especially since we're eliminating I'll say a 3rd middle school. They could each have that feeder pattern middle school and feeder pattern elementary schools, and get to know some of those same kids and build those relationships that they otherwise might not be able to by just bouncing around from school to school and whoever's available taking the call. So kind of prioritizing where they're at, with the majority of the time, say, being spent or not running around would be spent at a high school location.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Josiah?
I'll add one comment if I can.
Mhm.
I don't want Tulalip PD to go unrecognized in this. We do not have a formal school resource officer agreement with them, but they do support us through their community response team. They have 3 officers, whose primary responsibility is taking care of our Marysville Tulalip campus and Tulalip Elementary campus, and then the other 2 are kind of doing community events where children are at, or large community gatherings are happening. And so I want that to go on record that all of our schools are covered. The City of Marysville agreement is only for the schools in the City of Marysville.
Thank you very much.
No, I wish we were at a time where we didn't need SROs, but I'm glad that we have them. I know that they have a really a lot of them have really good relationships with the students. I know one of them, Dave White, was at our track meet on Saturday, and they're with kids. So they're becoming not just the person who catches you doing something bad, but they actually are building positive relationships with students on campus. So I think that's a very important factor that we kind of overlook.
I agree. Thank you.
All right, any other comments from the board? All right, thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you.
We're going to get into some follow-up items, work study dates, board meeting dates, and upcoming events. The next regular session is May 19th, 2025, 6 o'clock. And superintendent comments.
No additional comments.
All right, we'll jump into board comments. Start with you, Director Thomas.
I just want to say again, I'm sure everybody agrees that the student performances before the beginning of the actual meeting are great. And I'm very glad we could have it here. And I'm glad that continued. I would like to see the student and staff recognition stuff come back on the agenda, but it's probably just timing that it didn't quite work out that this is we had anything for this meeting. But that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Yeah, just want to share there's lots of cool stuff going in our district. I know that starting just like within the last 10 days, I went to the Getchell Booster Auction. Director Michael was there, and all the people that put in the effort, the volunteers that put in the effort to putting that event on, all the community members and businesses that contributed to that. I don't know the final numbers, but I think they finished right around $40,000 raised. So that was quite a successful evening for those people. The Rap Showcase, again, we mentioned, was really a cool event. Leaders from our community there. It was kind of funny that they said it's one of the few places where all the trade union guys actually get along together and are because they have a common goal. So it was kind of fun to hear them talk. We had a chance to stop by the Tier House to check out the adult transition program. It was really a cool thing they've got going on there. The excitement of the students or the young adults there telling me about their jobs and waiting for a call from HR from Ross, to see whether you got the job or not, and talking about the ability to take community transit and get from point A to point B. Really cool stuff going on there. Was with Dr. Rumbaugh at Unified Soccer at Getchell. It was a great program and something I'd like to see. I know that some of the school districts have a larger program. In fact, I think Lake Stevens, they always run the Unified kids at their high school track meets. The first heat is always the Unified kids running. So it'd be great if we could look to the future to try to expand that program somewhere like that. Middle school track, first track meet this last week. So the middle school kids are getting to participate, not fully in sports like we need to, but at least they had something to do that. Tomahawk Classic on Saturday was awesome. Josiah, hats off to Josiah, won the 300 hurdles, a gut race, and smoked it. So did a great job there. Again, lots of volunteers there. Funds were raised. People were sponsoring events. It's like the 100-meter dash sponsored by Connor Krebs. And so, people kind of got their name in the program and got a real fun way to get the community involved in that. So the point is not that I've been finding excuses not to do yard work. The point is that there's lots of cool stuff going on in Marysville, and we need to focus on all that. And there's probably lots more that I missed, but those are just some of the things that kind of was personally involved in just this last week or so. So get out there. There's the all-city track meet is this Friday. So that's the last kind of regular meet of the season. So if you haven't been to one, get out there, support all our athletes. And I know that a lot of the seasons are coming to the end, but still time to get out and see those last events for the season.
The production of Chicago at Pilchuck was wonderful as well.
Thank you very much. Dr. Michaels?
I was just going to say, I don't have a lot to add. I think, Craig, you covered a ton of it. But wanted to just acknowledge both Teacher Appreciation and Nursing Appreciation Week. I know certainly for my kids, I've had 3 that have gone through the district, and they have had wonderful educators who go above and beyond, certainly during the school day, but after the school day as well to help serve our kids. And in that vein, just want to acknowledge the public comment that we heard tonight, and definitely, as we continue to move through challenging budget times and a budget season where we're making really hard choices, that I think all of us think about the people impact that they have, not only to our staff, but our students and our families as well. So again, appreciate hearing from folks tonight. I'm so glad you made it to see Chicago. I was not able to get there and very sad. It's one of my favorites. And again, like you noted, Craig, there's a lot of really amazing things going on in the district. Was at the auction a couple weeks ago and just highlighting, the work from coaches and volunteers and our student athletes and our student musicians. We've got a wonderful district, and it's great to be a part of it.
Thank you very much, Josiah. Thank you. Right, so like I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, Director Davis is absent. She's attending an event honoring MMIWP, which is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and People. And although she would have liked to read this tonight, I will be reading it in her absence. MMIWP, which stands for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and People. Across the United States and Canada, Native women and girls are being taken or murdered at an unrelenting rate. These widespread injustices are leaving families wounded, and many First Nation communities are experiencing this added trauma on top of the already existing trauma, which compounds in communities working to heal their people from historical and generational trauma. A 2016 study by the National Institute of Justice found that more than 4 in 5 American Indian and Alaska Native women, or 84.3%, have experienced violence in their lifetime, including 56.1% who have experienced sexual violence. In the year leading up to the study, 39.8% of American Indian and Alaska Native women had experienced violence, including 14.4% who had experienced sexual violence. Overall, more than 1.5 million American Indian and Alaska Native women have experienced violence in their lifetime. Today is a National Day of Awareness for MMIWP, also known as Red Dress Day. Today is a day to honor those missing and murdered, as well as a call to action for this crisis that has been persistent. Today, we hope that you will educate yourself to understand and advocate for justice for the cases of MMIWP victims. Many documentaries call attention to and raise awareness of MMIW. There are countless websites that educate on this crisis, and you can find those resources at the tip of your fingers. And it says, Director Davis has asked me to share this today as she's absent. The Tulalip Tribes community is hosting an MMIWP event to honor and spread awareness through a coastal jam, lantern ceremony, and candlelight vigil. Our board wanted to take a moment to honor the victims of MMIWP today and also to spread awareness and advocate for justice. So I just want to say thank you to Director Davis for bringing that to the board so that we can speak on it in front of the community. And with that, as far as my piece, I do want to say if you weren't here for the performance, like Director Thomas alluded to, there was something that happened that that you would think was was an orchestrated part of the bit, and that was this hiccup that happened, and it was perfectly timed every time, and but it was amazing. I mean, the voices of little children singing is quite heavenly, to say the least, and so really appreciate the families, the parents, and guardians who were able to lend us their children tonight so that we could hear that. And thank you to everybody in attendance for staying for the whole meeting. And we hope to see you on the 19th. And with that, it is 7:19 and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.